Family, lean in close, because sometimes life will tap you on the shoulder, and other times it will grab you by the collar and say, "You are in much deeper trouble than you anticipated." And today I want to talk about that moment that every leader, every dreamer, every person with responsibility eventually faces. So let's look at our fictional brother, Mr. Redding, who found out the hard way that you can outrun a rumor, but you cannot outrun reality. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. Imagine for a moment the weight of unexpected challenges pressing down on someone in a position of influence. Often, when we look at public figures, we think their power shields them from the storms of life. We assume that their status or wealth creates an impenetrable barrier. But let me tell you, life doesn't play favorites. Just because someone has the world watching does not mean they are immune to the consequences of their actions, nor the complexity of the situations they face. And this is where the first key principle comes in. Recognizing the depth of trouble before it overtakes you is the hallmark of wisdom. Yet so few embrace it. How often do we underestimate the gravity of a situation simply because it hasn't hit us personally yet? We look at headlines, at courtrooms, at political battles, and we think that's someone else's fight, without realizing that trouble has a way of spreading like wildfire. And when it lands hard. Here's the hook. The deeper the trouble, the more profound the opportunity to grow if we approach it with clarity, faith, and courage. It is in the moments when we feel overwhelmed, when the weight of the unexpected threatens to crush us, that our character is revealed. The reality is that Mr. Trump, like any individual facing mounting challenges, must grapple with the consequences of decisions that ripple far beyond the initial act. And the question for all of us watching is not just what happens next, but what lessons can I take from this so I am not caught unprepared when my own trial comes? Many times, people get blindsided because they fail to anticipate the consequences of their choices. They fail to see the long-term implications of short-term decisions. They fail to understand that trouble, once it takes root, grows faster than imagination can keep pace. That is why awareness is power. That is why vigilance is essential. And here is another hook. It's in the anticipation, not the reaction, that true leaders distinguish themselves. Too often, we operate in crisis mode, responding to situations after they have already escalated. But wisdom and faith tell us to assess, to reflect, to prepare spiritually, mentally, and strategically before the storm hits. In Mr. Trump's case, the challenges he faces are not isolated incidents. They are cumulative, each one layering complexity upon complexity, and each one demanding a careful, grounded response. There is a spiritual principle at work here. For which of you, intending to build a tower, does not sit down first and count the cost? Life is relentless, and the deeper the trouble, the more costly it becomes if we fail to count the cost in advance. But here's where hope pierces through the tension. No matter how deep the trouble appears, it is never the end of the story. There is always a path to redemption, restoration, and growth if one is willing to face reality honestly, seek counsel wisely, and act decisively. And for every observer, there is a mirror here. We see the consequences unfold on a public stage, but we are reminded to examine our own lives, our own decisions, and our own readiness to face trials. The deeper the trouble, the greater the test of character, and the more essential it becomes to anchor ourselves in truth, in integrity, and in unwavering faith. And let me give you one final hook before we move on. Trouble is not just a threat. It's a teacher. And those who are willing to learn from it, even in the most unexpected places, will emerge stronger, wiser, and more prepared than ever before. When we examine the layers beneath a public struggle, it becomes clear that the surface story is rarely the full story. What often goes unnoticed is the subtle erosion of trust and credibility. And this is where the second key principle emerges. The weight of reputation and the fragility of public perception. People think that influence and power make one untouchable, but perception is a force more powerful than position. And here's the hook: once trust is compromised, the deeper the trouble becomes, because the world no longer responds to you based on who you are, but on the echoes of what they believe you have done. Mr. Trump's current difficulties illustrate this vividly. When a leader faces multiple controversies simultaneously, each one compounds the other, and suddenly what seemed manageable becomes a tidal wave of scrutiny. And we must ask ourselves, how prepared are we for the storms that threaten our own reputations, our own integrity, and our own relationships? Too often, we underestimate the cumulative effect of choices. Small decisions repeated, ignored warnings, compromises made under pressure, all converging into a moment of public reckoning. Here is the hook that will make you sit up. The deeper the trouble, the more critical it becomes to understand that influence is a double-edged sword. The very platform that amplifies your successes also magnifies your failures. And nothing in life hits harder than a misjudgment exposed on a public stage. But this principle applies to all of us, not just those in political office. Every decision we make is an investment in either credibility or doubt. Every word spoken, every action taken carries the weight of potential impact that may last far beyond the moment. And faith teaches us that integrity is non-negotiable. It is the foundation on which we can weather storms. The hook here is this: without a firm anchor of truth and accountability, the higher we rise, the further we fall. That is why the second key principle is so vital. Anticipate the consequences of your actions, guard your character, and do not allow shortcuts or expediency to dictate your behavior. The world watches closely And perception is shaped not just by facts, but by narrative, emotion, and timing. For Mr. Trump, the intricate web of legal, political, and social pressures illustrates how quickly perception can intensify trouble. And here is a powerful hook for reflection. What seems like an isolated misstep often becomes a magnifying lens, highlighting every previous compromise, every moment of poor judgment, every fracture in relationships that were once strong. This is why wisdom demands foresight, humility, and counsel. No one can navigate complex challenges alone, and the moment pride blocks guidance, the deeper the trouble grows. But notice something powerful: trouble, when faced with transparency and humility, can become a catalyst for renewed trust and restored influence. The hook is undeniable. The world may scrutinize, but character, when firmly grounded, speaks louder than headlines. And the lesson extends far beyond politics. In business, in ministry, in families, the principle remains: reputations are built over years, but can be threatened in moments. And it is not enough to simply react. We must anticipate, reflect, and act with integrity. For those who learn this lesson, there is a profound advantage. They understand that trouble does not simply test power. It tests faith, wisdom, and perseverance. The deeper the challenge, the sharper the lesson, and the greater the opportunity to grow beyond the confines of circumstance. And here is the hook that ties it all together. In every crisis, in every storm of public opinion or private pressure, we are offered a mirror. We are forced to examine our priorities, our principles, and our willingness to stand firm when the world expects us to bend. Those who master this principle understand that influence is not a shield. It is a responsibility. And with responsibility comes the obligation to act with unwavering integrity, even when the eyes of the world are watching, or even when it feels like they are not. One of the most overlooked realities in the face of mounting challenges is the power of accountability, or the lack thereof. Every leader, every public figure, and indeed every one of us operates within a framework of responsibility, whether we acknowledge it or not. Here's the hook: trouble deepens when accountability is ignored, postponed, or dismissed, because the consequences do not wait for convenience. They arrive relentlessly, like waves crashing against a cliff, reshaping the landscape of influence and reputation in ways that cannot be undone. Mr. Trump's situation provides a stark illustration of this truth. When decisions are made in isolation, when warnings are ignored, or when shortcuts are taken, the magnitude of consequences multiplies. But notice this: accountability is not punishment, it is guidance. It is the lens through which we can see clearly, the compass that directs us when the storms of life obscure our vision. The hook here is irresistible. Without it, even the strongest walls of power can crumble from within. Many people underestimate the role of accountability in their own lives. They assume that strength is shown through independence or resistance to correction. Yet true strength is demonstrated in the willingness to submit to truth, to receive counsel, and to adjust one's course when evidence, wisdom, or morality demands it. And this is why deeper trouble is often self-inflicted. The failure to acknowledge mistakes, to own missteps, and to implement correction allows problems to compound. Small cracks grow into fissures. Minor oversights develop into major crises. And what could have been managed early becomes a situation spiraling out of control. Here's a hook that resonates deeply. Trouble is not merely external. It is nurtured internally when we refuse to face reality with humility and courage. There is a spiritual dimension to this principle as well. Accountability aligns with the fundamental truth that we are stewards of our lives, our influence, and our legacy. To ignore accountability is to dismiss the very mechanism God has placed within human relationships and institutions to maintain balance, justice, and integrity. For Mr. Trump, the interplay of legal scrutiny, public perception, and personal decision-making underscores how essential accountability is for leaders at every level. Every unexamined action, every decision shielded from review, every failure to seek wise counsel magnifies the depth of trouble. And here is the hook that will make anyone pause. Those who resist accountability often find themselves trapped, not by external forces alone, but by the cumulative weight of unaddressed choices. Yet accountability also carries hope. It is the doorway to redemption, the bridge between misjudgment and correction. Those who embrace accountability early, who face truth courageously, and who seek wise guidance have the ability to navigate challenges with resilience that others cannot imagine. And the lesson here extends far beyond politics. In families, in businesses, in communities, the principle is consistent. The willingness to be accountable distinguishes those who grow from those who falter. The hook deepens further when we recognize that accountability is not merely reactive, it is proactive. It is the intentional act of reflection, self-examination, and preparation before crises strike. It is the daily commitment to align actions with values, to measure decisions against standards higher than convenience or fear. This is where character is forged, where resilience is tested, and where true leadership emerges. And let me give you one more hook before moving forward. Accountability does not make trouble disappear, but it changes how trouble is experienced. It turns potential disaster into a manageable challenge, confusion into clarity, and fear into purposeful action. The deeper the trouble, the more essential accountability becomes. Because it is the mechanism that prevents small issues from mushrooming into crises that threaten everything we hold dear. Every observer can see this principle at work on the world stage, but its relevance is personal, intimate, and immediate for each of us. Those who master the art of accountability understand that it is not a burden. It is the pathway to wisdom influence, and enduring impact. One of the most critical lessons in navigating deep trouble is the awareness of external forces that influence the trajectory of our lives. Often, we assume that the outcome of challenges rests solely on our actions, as though we are isolated from the broader currents at play. Here's the hook: the deeper the trouble, the more interconnected the circumstances, the people, and the decisions become. Every challenge is not just a test of personal skill or willpower. It is a complex intersection of timing, influence, and unseen factors that demand wisdom beyond ordinary understanding. Mr. Trump's situation vividly illustrates this principle. As the pressure mounts, it becomes evident that no one acts in isolation. Legal systems, political adversaries, public opinion, and personal networks all interact in ways that can accelerate difficulty if not navigated with discernment. And the hook here is undeniable. Ignoring the broader picture is like sailing into a storm blindfolded. You may have strength in your arms, but without vision and strategy, the waves will overwhelm you. Many people face trouble in life, not because they lack ability, but because they fail to recognize the network of factors that can either amplify success or magnify failure. Here is a profound hook for reflection. Influence is never singular. Every decision triggers reactions that ripple across relationships, institutions, and society. Those who underestimate this truth often find themselves blindsided by outcomes they could have anticipated if they had paused, observed, and acted with both wisdom and humility. Understanding the dynamics of external forces also reveals another truth: influence is relational. No one can confront deep trouble alone, and those who attempt it often discover too late the cost of isolation. There is power in counsel, accountability, and the willingness to seek insight beyond one's own perspective. The hook here is sharp and direct. Isolation amplifies trouble, while strategic engagement mitigates it. Life is a network, and navigating challenges without awareness of that network is like trying to play a chess game without seeing the board. Every opponent, every supporter, every observer shapes the unfolding story in ways that can be subtle or profound. For Mr. Trump, the interplay of political dynamics, legal scrutiny, and public perception demonstrates how deeply entangled forces influence outcomes. And the lesson extends beyond public figures. Every personal challenge, whether in family, career, or community, intersects with external pressures. And those who fail to see the full scope of influence are at risk of being swept away. And here's another hook. The deeper the trouble, the more the hidden forces become visible, and the more essential it becomes to discern the truth from the noise, to identify allies from detractors, and to act decisively in alignment with principle and strategy. There is a spiritual dimension here as well. Faith teaches that wisdom comes not only from knowledge, but from insight into timing, environment, and context. To ignore these elements is to act in haste, vulnerability, and unpreparedness. Those who master awareness of external forces gain a significant advantage. They anticipate challenges, adapt to shifting currents, and leverage circumstances for growth rather than destruction. And let me give you a final hook to sharpen the point: the world is full of forces beyond our control. But perception, preparation, and discernment allow us to navigate those forces with purpose and resilience. The deeper the trouble, the more vital it becomes to understand that every challenge is part of a larger tapestry. And only by seeing the full picture can one respond with the courage, wisdom, and strategy necessary to turn difficulty into opportunity. Awareness transforms overwhelm into clarity, complexity into action, and threat into a platform for growth. One of the most profound truths in facing deep trouble is understanding the power of perception and narrative. The way a situation is framed, interpreted, and communicated can either intensify the challenge or provide a pathway toward resolution. Here's the hook. Perception shapes reality more than facts alone. Mr. Trump's struggles are not just legal or political. They are battles of narrative, interpretation, and public understanding. And the same principle applies to all of us. In life, it is rarely the circumstances themselves that define the outcome, but how we perceive them, how we respond to them, and how we guide others to perceive them. This is where wisdom becomes essential. If we allow fear, pride, or denial to dictate our perception, we are destined to misjudge both the situation and our response. The hook here is sharp. The depth of trouble often increases not because the problem itself grows, but because misunderstanding, miscommunication, and misperception escalated. Every challenge carries multiple layers, and the narrative surrounding it can be far more powerful than the facts themselves. People will react to what they believe, not necessarily what is true. And those who fail to grasp this often find themselves fighting battles on the wrong fronts. Recognizing this principle requires humility and discernment. It requires stepping back and asking critical questions. What do others see? How is this perceived by those whose support is essential? How do my words and actions reinforce or mitigate the perception? Here is another hook. Perception is a reflection of both influence and responsibility. When handled wisely, it becomes a tool for resilience, credibility, and leadership. When neglected, it becomes a weapon against us. For Mr. Trump, every statement, every action, every decision is scrutinized and interpreted, often magnifying the impact of his challenges. And the same is true for anyone in positions of responsibility, influence, or leadership. Life will judge us by the way our actions are perceived as much as by the actions themselves. Understanding this principle changes the way we approach difficulty. Instead of reacting impulsively or defensively, we pause, assess, and craft a response that aligns with both truth and strategic perception. And here's the hook that drives it home. Perception is not manipulation. It is clarity. It is the intentional act of aligning how we are seen with what we truly represent. Neglect this, and the trouble deepens. Embrace it, and it becomes a tool for restoration and influence. Another critical insight is that perception affects not only how others respond, but also how we experience the challenge ourselves. A distorted narrative can generate unnecessary fear, anxiety, and paralysis. Yet, when we consciously reframe the situation, focusing on truth, values, and actionable steps, we regain control, reduce confusion, and build momentum toward resolution. The hook here is undeniable. Perspective shapes power. How we interpret reality determines how we act, and how we act determines the trajectory of our circumstances. Every leader, every influencer, every individual in the storm must recognize that mastery over perception is mastery over impact. And this mastery requires vigilance, patience, and intentionality. The deeper the trouble, the more essential it becomes to guide the narrative with integrity and wisdom, because every misstep in perception can amplify the difficulty, while every correct alignment can provide clarity, credibility, and hope. The stakes are high, but so are the opportunities. By taking ownership of perception, by understanding the power of narrative, and by acting with intentional alignment between truth and communication, we can navigate challenges with strategic foresight, spiritual grounding, and resilience. And let me leave you with a final hook here. Trouble is inevitable, but how it is experienced and ultimately resolved depends on our mastery over perception, our courage in communication, and our commitment to integrity in every step we take. One of the most overlooked, yet transformative principles in navigating deep trouble is the power of resilience rooted in faith and purpose. Life, by its very nature, is unpredictable, and challenges often arrive with a force that overwhelms even the most prepared individuals. Here's the hook: trouble, no matter how deep or complex, does not define the person. It reveals the character that has been cultivated over time. Mr. Trump's current struggles demonstrate how public pressure, legal scrutiny, and personal expectations intersect to create a crucible of testing. And this is where resilience becomes indispensable. It is not merely about surviving adversity. It is about harnessing the moment to grow, adapt, and emerge stronger. Resilience is a deliberate practice anchored in principles that transcend circumstance, and faith is its cornerstone. The hook here is profound. When the storms of life rage, those who anchor themselves in faith and purpose do not drift aimlessly. They navigate with clarity, courage, and conviction. Many people falter under pressure because they focus solely on the difficulty itself, rather than the opportunity it presents for growth and transformation. They see obstacles as threats rather than invitations to rise above limitations. Here is another hook. Every trial contains within it a lesson, a sharpening of skill, and a revelation of inner strength that cannot be accessed through comfort or ease. The deeper the trouble, the greater the opportunity to exercise resilience, and the more critical it becomes to respond with intention rather than reaction. Resilience is also intertwined with vision. Those who endure do so because they maintain a perspective that extends beyond the immediate crisis. They see the temporary nature of difficulty. They recognize the potential for restoration, and they align every action with enduring principles rather than short-term fixes. The hook is striking without vision. Trouble becomes a trap. With vision, it becomes a ladder. Faith amplifies resilience by providing a framework that transcends circumstance. It is the internal compass that reminds us that no matter how formidable the challenge, there is a source of guidance, wisdom, and strength that surpasses human understanding. Mr. Trump's predicament, while public and complex, underscores a universal truth. Those who rely on temporal resources alone will find them insufficient in moments of profound trial. Spiritual grounding, moral clarity, and purpose-driven action create resilience that money, influence, or strategy alone cannot provide. And here is the hook that resonates universally. The depth of trouble often determines the height of growth, and those who remain steadfast in principle and faith discover capacities within themselves they never imagined. Resilience is also demonstrated through adaptability. Those who face deep challenges successfully are not rigid. They adjust strategies, seek counsel, and pivot when necessary, all while maintaining alignment with core values. The hook here is essential rigidity in the face of adversity amplifies suffering, while flexibility rooted in principle transforms challenge into progress. Furthermore, resilience inspires others. When a leader or individual demonstrates calm, courage, and integrity under pressure, it galvanizes confidence, trust, and support among those around them. Every trial faced with resilience becomes a testimony, and every setback becomes an opportunity for influence and encouragement. And here is the final hook. The measure of greatness is not the absence of trouble, but the ability to rise above it with faith, wisdom, and unwavering purpose. In the deepest trials, in the moments when the weight of difficulty seems insurmountable, those who cultivate resilience rooted in faith discover not only survival but transformation, influence, and the profound satisfaction of knowing that character has been tested, sharpened, and proven capable of enduring anything that comes next. So family, if you feel like you're sinking, don't panic. Don't hide. Don't fake fine. Deep trouble doesn't mean you're done. It means you're being called higher. Remember this hook: God can take the deepest pit and turn it into the strongest platform for your future. Lift your head, learn the lesson, and let the Lord lead you out. Because the God who allows deep trouble is the same God who knows how to pull you back to the surface stronger than before.